and you run into the fallacy of if then this, and you think then this is going to be happiness on the other side of it. Yeah, we're live. But I was saying about the surrender experiment. It's this amazing book that I actually read when I was like in Bali. And it's about just like surrendering to the universe or God. So when things get put in front of you, you just kind of receive them and take them in and stop trying to like control everything.
100%.
He talks about this like force and flow, and like when you're trying to control everything, like you're in a state of force, you're forcing it. And then when you're in a state of flow, things are just like coming to you.
Yeah, and there's signs.
Yeah.
And they're all there.
Yeah.
But if you're in that force mode, you're not observing the signs that are already right there in front of you to put you into that flow state.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've just tried to be like way more aware of that.
Yeah.
You know, just like when things happen, then I'm like, like I'm just gonna roll with this. Like I'm gonna lean in and see where this goes, which is very much like how you and I met, in all honesty. What's up, everyone, by the way? Thanks for joining in. I'm here with Scott Minker. Thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. I'd love to be here.
Well, the way you and I met is so interesting because I was playing volleyball with a dear friend of mine, Evan Quinn.
Yep.
And Evan knew I started this podcast. And Evan, if you're listening, thank you so much for introducing me to Scott. And he basically was like, Sean, you got to meet this guy. He's got one of the most like remarkable stories I've ever heard. And he's such a great guy. And, you know, Evan's a stud of a human being and such a great guy himself. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, wow, like I'd love to connect with Scott. And so he connected us via text. You and I went back and forth, set up a time to talk. And we jumped on a phone call on a Friday, and I think we talked for like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
like it was just
the podcast.
Yeah,
right there.
we could have. It was just like so natural. And then we were gonna like do the podcast episode, like, and then life happened. It didn't end up like working out. And then one day I was thinking about people that would be interesting to have on the podcast, and I just called you out of the blue, and you were on your way to go meet with Evan, which is like just a God thing, a universe thing. And you were like, all right, we got to put this on the book. So here we are today. Yeah. So thank you for being on first and foremost.
Thanks for having me.
So for the audience that doesn't know you, give them like a quick little rundown. And by the way, for the people listening, like I can't wait for you to hear his story and hear more about Scott because he's such an amazing guy. Basically, I feel like your life changed, right? Like you came from a very successful background, you know, running a company, doing like kind of like the grind, as we say, like you had like all the things going for you, and then your life just like in a snap of a finger, like it just like basically changed. Yeah. Tell the audience like kind of what happened in that moment.
Just to jump straight into it, I was my car was packed to go on a business trip, and I came downstairs and I told my wife that I had a headache, and she said, well, why don't you wait and just go up tomorrow? And for some reason I listened to her. I had a headache. But talking about a sign, it's like there was something about to happen. And I ended up staying home and had a really bad headache all day long. And in the middle of the night, around 1 o'clock, I woke my wife up. She was actually kind of doing some research, pinched nerve, like what's going on. I was taking a muscle relaxer, migraine medicine. And I told her, I said, I feel like my head's about to explode. And it literally did. And I had a ruptured brain aneurysm in the middle of the night. And if I hadn't listened to her, I would have been on this business trip by myself, and you and I would not be sitting here.
Wow.
So 8 long minutes of me being unconscious and her like by my side. Woke up to an army of EMTs and paramedics in the house. Fortunately, we live right by UCLA, and they got me into Ronald Reagan and got me into surgery. And so essentially 2 months in the hospital, ICU, 17 surgeries, woke up blind in the hospital, and now I can see 20/20 with glasses. And so, you know, what I've been told is I'm a miracle. And so the fact that I'm sitting here today is a miracle.
That is a miracle. I remember when you were telling me you basically had an instance where you thought that was the end. Like you were saying goodbye to your loved ones.
Yeah. There's a moment where when you're in the ICU, which is not a great place, and you're just constantly having surgeries and you're in and out of consciousness, I was tired. And there was a moment, and one of the memories I have of being in the ICU, and I said to Tracy, and I hadn't seen my kids this whole time because she didn't want the kids to, if things didn't work out, their last memory of their dad to be tight, connected to machinery and intubated, all this stuff.
So heavy.
And so she did an amazing job of protecting the kids and not having that rock their world. But I hadn't seen them for almost 2 months. And I have a memory of saying to her, like, I love you. I love the kids. Take care of them and let them know I love them. And there was something around that moment, which I can't even imagine, like what she had to go through being on the other side of that message. But one thing that I've related, I had a friend who recently put their grandmother into hospice, and I said, I've been at the doorstep. And the amazing thing is, and I used to fear death, and now I don't, because I was on morphine, oxy, like I was on a cocktail of every drug imaginable to make me comfortable. And so I was comfortable, and my parents flew in from Texas the next day. They spent 10 weeks in LA by my bedside every day, reading messages of love and prayers. My wife, my in-laws, our village showed up in such an amazing way.
You were in the hospital for how long?
2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I was blind when I woke up, and Tracy used to put all the cards that were get well cards that were sent to me. She would tape them up in every single room that I moved to at the hospital. Not because I could see them, but because she wanted the care team to know that there was an army that's fighting for me to be here.
Wow.
And that I'm loved. And what an amazing gift that is, that I now have this treasure box of all these cards that I'm now turning into a coffee book. But that is a gift to now have, as opposed to a pile of sympathy cards. And so, going back to your question, the fact that I was comfortable and I knew I was loved, that's all you can ask for at the end of life. And so there's something really comforting to me to know that I've been in that moment, and it was very peaceful. And the amazing thing about what I've just been through, I've walked through the fire. I survived the aneurysm. I survived the brain bleeds. I had 106-degree temperature for 2 weeks straight that they were trying to get under control. I had all these things that if anything could go wrong, it did go wrong. I got discharged to a outpatient rehab facility, and Tracy noticed that I was retreating, and it turned out that I had a brain bleed. And so I woke up one morning back in the ICU after having been discharged, thinking that I was on my way. And there's you hear oftentimes about people that survive cancer, and it's there's a mindset around do you throw in the towel or do you beat this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that was my moment where I was I am not going backwards. I'm not going to end up back in the hospital again. I'm willing my way out of this place.
What was the inspiration? What was inside of you, being I'm not throwing in the towel in that moment?
I think it just came. I think there was so much love in my life that was coming from my family, and friends, and I think it was I don't know. There's just a shift where I was I'm going to will myself out of this thing, and I'm going to put 110% mentally and physically into getting myself out of this place. And from that moment forward, anytime I had any type of rehab or PT or anything, I was all in, 110%. Once I got out of the hospital finally, I came home. I couldn't, I weighed 137 pounds. Lost over 25 pounds. Hospital beds are not a great place to build up your strength. All my muscles had atrophied. I could barely walk. I had to learn how to basically walk again. And I had 30 hours a week of in-home rehab for 2 months to get my strength back, speech therapy, cognitive therapy, physical therapy, all these things to get my faculties back. And every day I would show up and I was all in 110%. And then, at night when we're watching TV, I was down on the ground doing all of my exercises because I wanted to get my strength back and I wanted to get back to where I used to be.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah.
What a story.
And the beauty that, unlike, cancer, right? I don't have to worry that I'm going back in 6 months and that did it come back? Did it spread somewhere else? I've walked through the fire. And the beauty is now I have all these life lessons to go along with it. I got the tattoo to go along with it.
What's the tattoo?
So when I was at the rehab outpatient or inpatient rehab facility, I told Tracy, my wife, I said, I'm now Scott 2.0. This has been this fundamental experience that's changed my life. And so the tattoo is a 2.0.
Yeah, Scott 2.0.
Yeah, Scott.
So Scott prior to that experience was Scott 1.0.
Yeah.
And then you go through something like that and it rewires your brain. It changes you.
Quite literally.
Yeah, quite literally.
The brain is like a computer.
Yeah.
And like the crazy thing is my brain is literally building new pathways and like rehabilitating itself. And so like I'm quite literally rebuilding my brain while having this new 2.0 kind of.
Yeah. Gosh, I have so many questions for you. Okay, so the first thing is you brought up Scott 2.0. What was Scott 1.0 like?
Hard charging, goal oriented, love to have fun and enjoy the people in my life. And, I look at Scott 2.0 as an evolution. So everything's still there from 1.0. I think there's just there's some finesse and some improvements on the margin to 2.0. And Scott 2.0 is enjoying the journey. And I think part of, Scott 1.0 was so focused on goals and achievement and like providing for my family and more and better and the next, as opposed to like being in the moment and being where my feet are.
I find I definitely relate to Scott 1.0 in my life right now.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah. Just the achievement, just like what's next. This is like overused, but the grind.
Yeah.
Like the striving, right?
Yeah.
The striving for the next thing. And you run into the fallacy of if then this, and you think then this is going to be like there's happiness on the other side of it, right? You kind of like, you fool yourself to a certain degree of like, okay, once I get that, then I'm going to be good.
Right.
But wise people like yourself and wise people that, you talk to that are older, it's like, that's not really what happens.
Yeah. I like to think of that as like going to Disneyland and thinking you're you're almost at the front of the line and you get to the next room and there's just another switchback, right? It's like,
that's so true.
Part of my journey, and I think I've sold 1 million copies now of Dan Sullivan's book, The Gap and the Gain.
Which I'm a big fan of Gap and Gain and Dan Sullivan, as we talked about.
Yeah.
Such an incredible concept.
And it's been so instrumental in my life because I read it this summer and it has application to my healing journey and as a leader in business and as a father. Like there's so much application of that construct, which is, as a high achieving goal oriented person, you're living in the gap, right? Because there's always something in front of you that you're striving towards for more or better.
Yeah.
And living in the gap is not a fun place to live because you're never there, right? And the goalpost keeps moving, as opposed to living in the gain, which is actually looking backwards to say, how far have I come? Look at all the progress that's been made from the beginning point. And so whether it's, my healing journey where it's like I couldn't run and that kind of could bum me out if I lived in the gap, or I could look back and be like, oh my God, remember I came home and my son and my wife were on both sides of me helping me walk into the house. And now I can walk by myself around the neighborhood. Like it's the same thing, but it's just like looking at it from two different perspectives.
Yeah, it's a completely different perspective, and it's a state of gratitude.
Yeah, 100%.
That's really what it comes down to, and that concept was pretty transformational for me as well. In that, like, it like changes your perspective on like how you see progress.
100%. And like even in business, like we opened a new facility a couple months ago, and I sat around with my leadership team and I said, let's create some space to honor the fact that a lot of you spent over 4 years to get this operational. And so is there still a punch list of things to do? Sure. And is there the next project to focus on just to kind of blow past it and get on to the next project? Let's not do that. Let's look at the gains of like, you guys made this happen, and let's live in the gain for at least a hot second before we move on to the next project.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think a lot of people could just focus on, well, this still isn't working.
Yeah.
That needs to be fixed. And then they're on to the next project and never take time to honor the progress and the gains.
And it's so important to do that.
Yeah.
So important.
Otherwise, you're just constantly just moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And if you're in that gap mindset, you're never whole.
Yes.
Like there's always like something missing.
Yeah, you're always chasing.
Yeah.
Always chasing the next thing, which, it can even be like little small things, because you and I have talked a few times on the phone, and I'll say, Scott, how are you? You're like, I'm great. Like the sky, the sky is blue. It's a beautiful day. Like you were someone, every time I talk to you, you're focusing on the gratitude that you have in that moment, which I think that really impacts people, because not everyone's like that.
I think a lot of people, it's like,
I'm so busy. I got so much going on,
And I think part of that came from when I came home from the hospital. There was a period where it felt like Groundhog Day, where I was just like, I didn't want to keep doing PT, OT, speech. Like I wanted to get back to my life. I couldn't drive. I wanted my life back. And it felt like Groundhog Day was like just the same thing over and over again. And my mother-in-law, who beat cancer, recommended you need to start journaling, because it forces you to focus on the gratitude and the progress and all the good that's happened in the day. And it's a great way to look back and be like, oh my God, it's only been 3 weeks since I started driving. Wow. And so I think as my brain has been kind of remapping itself, I've now hardwired it to focus on the gratitude through that journaling practice. And she used to say when she had cancer, every morning she would wake up and her mantra was blue skies. And it was like, how lucky am I to be able to wake up and see the blue skies? And so it's been a family thing about like blue skies, and it's like everything's good, right?
Yeah.
Like we're alive.
Yeah.
And now it has a different meaning for me.
Totally.
And
especially after something like that you went through.
Yeah. And I found when I came home, and like, this was never me. Scott 1.0 wasn't noticing walking outside and seeing like the fresh, blooms on the trees in springtime.
How cool is that?
And the birds chirping in the backyard, right?
Yeah.
Because like you're throwing in your AirPods and you're getting on a conference call, or you're going on a walk, listening to a podcast. And it's like,
oh my gosh, you're literally talking about me right now.
Yeah. And it's like, and so when we talk about some of the big learnings, one of the biggest has just been be where your feet are.
Yeah. Slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down.
And like the committee in your head that's racing of like all the things to do, and my calendar's driving my schedule. It's like, just slow down.
Yeah. The committee in your head. That's a good one. That's a really, really good one. Yeah. It's crazy that we have to go through something like that, right? Go through an episode, kind of you sharing what you went through, where, man, I can't imagine what that was like, right? So close to death, where it rewires your brain and changes you, that all of a sudden all of these things that we've been told over our life now become much more real.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't want to say it's unfortunate, but it's just like, usually people have to have some life-altering experience to come to this conclusion, to a certain degree.
And I've become a glasses half full person.
Were you not a glass half full?
No.
Really?
I was not.
But we're like glass half empty, or just more of a pessimist? Yeah, got it.
Yeah, more of that. My wife was always...
Or like people that say they're a pessimist, they're like, no,
I wasn't a pessimist.
I'm a realist.
Yeah, I think that's more like it. But for me, I've had people be like, oh my God, I heard about you. I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. And like, I'm like, don't be sorry, because look, like, yes, I walked through the fire and it was terrible for my family in particular. But what a gift that I still have half of my life ahead of me, where I now have this 2.0 mindset of blue skies and the glass is half full. Like, to me, that's a gift.
Yeah, that's definitely a gift. Yeah,
And,
without a doubt.
And part of why I'm here is because, and why when I was, I'm part of a business group called YPO, and I was the keynote at our president's retreat. And I wanted to do that because, YPO is a group of CEOs and presidents that run their companies, and you would think, looking in from the outside, like, check every box, like successful, kids in private school, like trips, like all their needs are met, like they should be on top of the world. And I know that that's not always the case. And so I feel like why I wanted to, give my talk, and why part of why I'm here is because I know there's a lot of 1.0 Scots out there that are living in the gap, that are part of that grind culture, that my hope is that people don't have to go through 17 surgeries and a near-death experience to have this awakening, to enjoy the juice of life and to enjoy the journey. And I think that was probably the thing that was missing the most, is like, I wasn't all in on the journey, and now I am. And every day to me is like a gift, and I want to get the most out of it. I don't want to waste a single day of my life.
Would you say you're happier?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at peace. And I think living with intention. And I think, my sense is a lot of people like react to life, and whatever's thrown at them, they just kind of go through the motion. And going back to the Disneyland kind of
ride.
Yeah, I think that happiness is around the corner. And so I don't want to wait until I'm retired to kind of be like, oh, that's where I can like kick back and relax and travel. Like, because maybe my hips don't work, or I die of an aneurysm, and so I won't make it there. So it's like, let's do it now.
Yeah.
And to bring it home, I have a son who's a junior in high school, and he's starting the college application process. And I had dinner with him the other night, and I said, I want you to enjoy these last 18 months of high school. And, when you have the boys over for football, like, enjoy that. And when you study for a test and you get a good grade, or you leave it all on the field, like, sit in that and get fulfillment and joy from those moments. Enjoy your teachers, your friends, and don't feel like high school and these next 18 months are about a GPA and an SAT and a college acceptance letter as like finally where you're going to get to a place of achievement or believe happiness exists only in college.
Yeah.
Because guess what? You're going to get to college and it's going to be hard, and you're going to compete for internships and jobs, and and then life just happens. And nobody has this conversation to be like, hey, don't just get on the treadmill and go and work your ass off to be 65 years old and think that you can finally enjoy life. Like, do it every day along the way.
What would you do differently? Like, referring to Scott 1.0, knowing what you know now, what would you have changed?
I think I just would, the thing that's really come into focus for me is just enjoying the people in my life, even like friends, family, and experiences, and just like really just enjoying time with the people in your life and investing in those relationships. Like when my parents would come out from Texas before this to visit, it'd be going to a football game or a kid's soccer game and the spring performance and let's meet for dinner. And last fall when I could travel by myself, which was like a gift, right? Which before like I would take for granted, but I was like, I'm navigating an airport by myself and I'm going to visit my parents with intention. And it was just me without the kids and my wife. And we had breakfast in Colorado, and we sat around the table for like another hour and just talked, right? Without like running off to the next event. It was just like, just enjoying those relationships. And like my parents showed up for me in such an amazing way. And I think you really start to understand like the love of a parent when you go through something like this. And every morning they showed up. And, you know, even the morning of the marathon, my dad Ubered from his hotel, walked through barriers to get to my hospital room to relieve the night nurse, to help me with my breakfast, to take care of me. And it's like they showed up every single day for me. And so, you know, I don't take those relationships for granted anymore. And like when I think of a friend, like I actually reach out, right? So the other day I said, let's get together when I ran into somebody, and I actually followed up and we had lunch. And it's like just not going through the motion, like texting and
hey, let's get together sometime, and then like no follow through on that. Like you're actually seeing it through because you're being more intentional.
And just wanting, and like so many people in my life have kind of come back because of this experience. And it just makes me realize like how many people are on this journey with me, and that's what matters the most. It's the people in our lives that, you know, and really just leaning into those. Yeah.
Well, it seems like to me every aspect of your life you're focusing on the gain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hearing you talk, it's all about the gain. Like whether it's you walking through a airport all alone, it's like you're not thinking about through the lens of the gap. It's like, oh no, look how far I've come, and I'm so grateful for this. Yeah.
And I even say like when I'm like on the Sepulveda Pass and bumper to bumper traffic, I don't see taillights, right? Like I'm either listening to a podcast, listening to music, taking a work call, talking to a friend, and I see the natural beauty of those hills, you know, going through the pass and the vegetation. I actually notice that. As opposed to just like, look at Waze with like 16 minutes to go 1 mile.
That's awesome. So obviously you went through this crazy event in your life, but you've been intentional with looking at things through the gain, but specifically like being in a state of constant gratitude. Has journaling really helped you with that? Like when you journal, are you really intentional with being like, okay, I'm going to spend, you know, the next 10 minutes or however long you journal, like just talking about all the things I'm grateful for? Like, is that how you journal?
Well, it's funny. It's a very structured journal.
Oh, interesting. We'd love to dive into it if you're open to sharing.
It's a journal from a company called Papier, P-A-P-I-E-R. And it's funny. My wife gave me this wellness journal for our anniversary. And after my mother-in-law said, you should start journaling, I was like, I remember Tracy gave me this journal. And I found it in my bookcase, and it had the card in it, and not a single word was written in it, right? It was like one of those 1.0, like that was a nice gift, put it on the bookshelf, but don't do anything with it. And the way it's structured is that, you know, you start the day with 3 intentions that you set for the day. And in the evening, you recap kind of what happened, what are you grateful for? And the part that, you know, I really leaned in on was the human interactions from the day. And so it really forced me to start not just reaching out and having intentional conversations with people in your life, but also to know it's like, oh, I talked to my best friend from college today, and like, and getting a lot from those interactions, as opposed to like it just being, you know, podcast, getting in the car, or, you know, headphone, getting in the car and just moving on.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really, really cool. Because I do journal from time to time, and I love journaling. It's so life-giving, but I don't have a journal where it's like super intentional with like questions.
I'll get you one.
Yeah, thank you for that. That'd be awesome.
But you have to commit to it.
Yeah, for sure. And are you doing it in the morning, or are you doing it in the evening, or both?
Both.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the morning part is like setting the intentions for the day, and you can even do it the night before, like to be like, tomorrow this is what I want to do.
Cool.
And the evening is kind of the recap, and it's easy just to be like, oh, I'm tired, I'm not going to get to it.
Yeah.
But you have to just kind of add it to your repertoire and make it happen.
So following up on all of this, like you lead a successful company, how has this changed your leadership style, given this experience?
It's funny. I took some of my teammates out to lunch the other day, and we have a new team member who they were talking about Scott 2.0, And he said,
That's a cool tattoo, by the way.
thank you.
Yeah. Is that your only tattoo?
It's my only one. But now I've got the bug, and so there might be a blue skies or something.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool too.
And he said, I only know Scott 2.0, and I really like him. And he said, what was Scott 1.0 like? And one of the guys said, oh, Mr. Minker's still the same hard-charging type A person that he was before. It's just that he's a little bit chiller. And so I think the approach is, we were talking before we started recording about just kind of being in a flow state.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling like you have to control everything and like make it all happen, I think there's just a different energy. And I find that I'm now vibrating at a higher frequency, and I think people pick up on energy.
Definitely.
And so instead of feeling like I have to be like the guy who sets the strategy and is the taskmaster to make it all happen, I'm just have a different energy. And I also feel like Scott 1.0 was a bit of a lone wolf that felt like all the problems were on my shoulders and I had to figure them out as the leader. And now I think there's more of collaboration and bringing people into the solution mindset to figure things out.
Yeah, I'm a big believer as well in vibes. Vibes are very, very important. Vibrations, like picking up on that, instincts on things, but also like being very aware of how you're showing up.
100%.
Like, what is your vibration that you're putting into the world? Because I think like attracts like.
Yep.
And so that's something that I'm like very, very big on myself.
Yeah, and that has been an intention in the past, where like recognizing how you show up is important.
Yeah.
Right? Like, instead of just having a terrible phone call and rolling into a meeting and bring that energy with you, sometimes you have to leave it at the door.
Yeah.
And recognize how you're showing up. And I do that. One of the things that I'm really conscientious of is when I come home, no matter what, as soon as I pull into the garage, I have a reset, and I'm aware of the energy that I'm bringing into the house.
That's really, really cool.
And my daughter even picked up on it a couple of weeks ago. She said, I really like Dad 2.0.
That's awesome.
Right?
Wow.
And so it's like,
that's cool.
So it's changed the energy in the house.
Yeah.
And like that conversation.
How much did that mean to you?
I mean, that's the world.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah. And so like even the conversation with my son that I referenced, like I wouldn't have had those conversations if before I went through this crazy journey.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy, Scott. That is really, really cool. So you brought some things.
Yeah.
Some which I'm excited to get into.
My bullet tricks.
Yeah, I call them when we were talking. I'm like, oh, Scott-isms, which I don't know if that's what they're called.
You created it. That's a new ism.
Okay, so give us the background. So for the audience that isn't watching the video version of this podcast, Scott just brought out a bowl with a bunch of rocks.
Yeah.
And on these rocks, there are different little sayings or words. Okay, so this first one, high frequency, which is what we just got into.
Yeah, so I think some of these we've already kind of gone through a lot of these.
2.0, yeah, we've gotten into that one.
And so a lot of it is, a lot of things we've talked about are just now part of my vernacular. And it's how I live my life. And my wife got me these engraved rocks, and I think we'll add to these collections, as more Scottisms come to light. And it's just kind of a reminder of where I've been and now where I'm going in this 2.0 life. And there's just my hope is that it's not just for me, but the people in my life.
Definitely.
To like kind of live some of these Scottisms.
Yeah. Well, I think you're so intentional with the conversations that you're having that I think you're inspiring a lot of people around you. Yeah. Like just from our conversations that you and I had, and by the way, we didn't really know each other. Yeah. We got introduced through Evan, but had this like hour and a half long conversation. Which there were so many things that you said that I found to be so inspiring, like you exude this. It's that is your frequency, that high frequency. Yeah. And just like, it's such a good reminder to be where your feet are. Cause that's one of your Scottisms. Yeah. One of your Scottisms, just like being present, being full of gratitude. Just your acknowledgement the other day where you were talking about blue skies, right? Which now I know is a Scottism. Yeah, you're going to reference the blue skies.
This is my mother-in-law, so I have to give credit to that one to her. But yeah, and it's funny because as soon as I was able to drive, back to work. And the morning I was getting ready to do that, I said to myself, I get to go to work today. I'm never going to say I have to go to work ever again, because for 4 months I couldn't go to work. And so in that journey, you know, when I got to, you know, a place where I wanted to start writing a book, to start telling my story to inspire others, you know, I now have this realization that writing a book is a huge task, and I have a mad respect for people that write books and screenplays. But what I wanted to do, the control type A Scott 1.0, I wanted to write the book, go on the speaking circuit, do the TED Talks, and then tell my story.
Yeah.
But what I'm realizing, what I've come to realize, is like life is not linear.
Yeah.
And so the way that I'm telling my story isn't happening the way I thought when I first came home. And like, this is a perfect example where I'm starting to tell my story. I'm starting to get some of these Scottisms out into the world, and it's just not happening the way that I initially expected it to. And the other day I was talking to, you know, somebody on a work call, and he asked about what had happened to me, and he ended the call by saying, "Thank you for sharing your story. It's so inspiring." And it was I needed this wake up call today. And I feel like so many times we hear, oh, so-and-so got cancer. It's such a reminder. Somebody died. Like, life is precious, and like, live in the moment, carpe diem. And then you go back to your life, and it's like you forget about it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing for me, and what these represent is like, this isn't, and one of my fears when I came back was that 2.0 was a phase. And I didn't want to revert back to the old ways or forget some of this stuff. And so I won't, because this is now who I am. And these are just a reminder. My hope is that there's a collection that just grows, and that I can share these with others.
Yeah, and it's cool too for like the audience that's maybe wants to change some of their ways, right? That is like operating in low frequency, or doesn't have your optimism, right? And wants to have that like you can change. That's like one of the things that like I think about all the time is you can rewire your brain. It takes some time, and it takes some serious intention and effort, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I stopped drinking about 775 days ago.
Wow.
And I read a book called Sober Curious.
Oh, interesting.
And the premise of the book is it takes 100 days to change any habit in life. And so as a goal-oriented person, I was like, I'm going to do this 100-day challenge after COVID and not drink. And I did it, and I set a counter on my phone to mark the 100 days, and I never felt better. I was sleeping better. I did blood work before and after, and like everything was way better. And so it's like, why would I go back to that? But the whole idea is that, you know, give anything 100 days and you can change habits. But I think one of the biggest things for me has been just living where your feet are.
Yeah.
And that, like, if you can start with anything, pick up the gap and the gain to get that gain mindset, and just be where your feet are and live life with 5 senses. Like, you can start today by just going outside and just listen to the birds, look at the blue skies, feel the temperature, smell the air, and enjoy your coffee.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. What's the changing gears here? What's the rock? I know you have a rock in your pocket.
Yeah.
What's that one about?
So it has the word patience on it.
Okay.
And, you know, as a goal-oriented type A person, like, patience was never a virtue of mine.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this whole crazy journey has taught me is that things don't happen overnight, and you have to be patient. And, you know, my recovery wasn't fast. And my mother sent this to me from Texas because she knew that I needed some patience. And it was kind of one of those things like mother's love, like, this is exactly what I needed. And it's been something that I've really taken to heart. And I now, every day, I put it in my pocket with my wallet. And it's just like a constant reminder of, like, things aren't going to happen overnight. And some things take time. And so patience has been a huge virtue that I've brought onto this journey with me, which has been game changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard the saying, I want patience and I want it now. I can thank my grandma for that one. She said that line one time. I never forgot it. Were you a spiritual person before this?
No.
Have you become spiritual?
I have. And I don't have the rock yet. So when Tracy listens to this, maybe she'll get a rock about no coincidences. That's another.
Tracy, I hope you're listening.
I go back to that story of me being here, right? No coincidence that Tracy said, don't get in your car, don't drive. And there's even when I was on the way to meet with Evan, you and I hadn't talked for a couple of weeks, and you called me to get me to sit in the seat on the way to meet with the guy who introduced us. Like, that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
And so it leaves me believing there's something bigger at play here. What that means, I don't know. But I do believe that as we talk kind of this flow state, so one thing that I do every day as part of my healing journey, and now just part of my gratitude practice, is I meditate every day. Definitely one time, sometimes twice a day, morning and evening. And I have a meditation therapist that I work with where it's, I come in and I see her, we talk about what's going on, and then she records a custom meditation set to binaural beats. That's
how cool. Wow.
Unbelievable gift. And I have it going back years. And so it's kind of like this library of Scott 1.0 and Scott 2.0. And a couple of months ago, we recorded a meditation called the Unmarked Trail. And the premise of it is that I'm on this journey and I don't know where I'm going, which before this was very hard for me not to be in control, to know, where I'm going today and tomorrow. And so part of it has been letting go to believe that I'm on the right path and everything will work out. And the other part of the meditation is that there's going to be people along the way that show up, that are there to guide you to where you need to be. And so from a spirituality standpoint, meditation has been an important part of my healing journey and enabling me to be where my feet are, to be grateful, because life happens, right? And life is full of problems and challenges and anxiety.
Like hearing your story of yes, successful background in business, but hey, that's not really where I want to take this podcast. Where I want to take this podcast is this life-altering experience that I had,
right,
that changed my mindset from 1.0 to 2.0.
Right. And everybody works.
Yeah.
Everybody is a son or a daughter. Everybody has friends. Everybody's and so it's that's all relatable.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I think no matter who you are, we all put our pants on the same, right? And we all have the same challenges. And it's and I said this at the beginning, I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. And that's, to me, the $1 million question, right? How can I relate this information to people to change lives? And even if it's the person who I talked to the other day is if there was something that he took away from that conversation that impacted his life for the better, that's a win.
Yeah, definitely.
What I was wanting to go back to was the power of now.
I could be totally wrong about this, but the guy who wrote The Power of Now, I also think we were talking early on, I don't know if the camera was rolling, but the surrender experiment, I want to say, is it Michael, I forget his name, but anyways, the guy who wrote the surrender experience, I think he also wrote The Power of Now.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. Can we look that up, Tanner?
Yeah. What's it called?
The Power of Now.
Okay.
I want to say his name was Michael.
It's not that.
It's not?
No.
Are you talking about
Power
some
of
Buddhist?
Now. No, it's I can't. It's not. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Eckhart Tolle.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He's got such a great voice.
Right.
And I've heard recordings from him.
Talking about 1.0 Scott, I read The Power of Now years ago, and the construct is very simple.
Yeah.
It's just be where your feet are.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can either go into the past and worry, or you can go into the future and have anxiety. and worry about things into the future. Most of the time, those worries never come to fruition. And the things that you're worrying about in the past, you can't change. So what's the point of living in those two constructs? And so I think what I just went through was kind of what I needed to kind of break through to the other side to now live this
the
power
present.
now.
Yeah.
And so, going back to be where your feet are.
Totally.
Like, that is the beginning of this all. And so every day I try to be where my feet are.
Yeah. And it's so great because like every now and then in life you run into someone who's had a traumatic experience like you, where it reminds you of like, okay, like you might be focusing or prioritizing the wrong things, but it takes interacting with people like yourself where it's a moment in time for you to step back and kind of assess your life and be like, okay, maybe there's a few things here and there that I need to change.
And for me, that's what this tattoo is.
Yeah.
And so if I'm washing my hands or if I'm in the car or I'm on a, in a meeting, like it's right there.
Yeah.
And it's a constant reminder to be where my feet are.
Definitely.
And to live life with intention and to focus on all that's good.
Yeah. So you talked about 2 books. You talked about Gap in the Gain. You talked about The Power of Now. Is there any other books that you recommend? No. So just those. That's good. That's really, really good though. I haven't read The Power of Now. I think I was going back. I was talking about the surrender experience. Maybe it's a surrender experiment. I don't know which one it is, but it's one of those.
Okay.
But I also downloaded The Power of Now.
Okay.
And I was trying to read those.
Yeah.
But I kind of leaned into
the construct is just so simple.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you've said it perfectly.
When you're in the shower and your mind's racing about what's on my calendar for today and, I've got this call.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that they might do this or, I can't believe I said that in that last meeting. Don't live there.
Totally.
Be right where you are.
Yeah. Okay. So, we went through Scottisms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scott's best practices throughout a day. How about that one? How about what you would recommend? Like if you were to say, hey, from when the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, I would try to set up your day to look like this. And in keeping in mind that people that listen or myself, we work, we have families, there's a lot of things going on. What would be hey, I would recommend you implement a few of these things throughout your day and you're going to see meaningful change.
Yeah. I think the first thing is, you hear it frequently now, blue skies before blue screen, where it's just, I think a lot of people just grab their phone and just get into the grind, and whatever fires are in their inbox is kind of what drives their day. I think when
I like that, by the way. I haven't actually heard it. Blue skies before blue screens.
Yeah.
I've heard blue skies and stay away from your phone, but I've never heard it said like that. That's good.
But why would you wake up and just immediately let everybody who has access to your phone dictate how you're going to start?
Habit.
Yeah.
The dopamine hit of I need to do this. I need to start achieving. I need to start getting tasks done.
Yeah. And so I think, that's a starting point.
Yeah.
And, I think just living setting intentions for how you want to show up for the day and what you want to get done in the day is really important. I now exercise every day, even if it's, I'm on a work trip and I only have 15 minutes to go for a walk. Instead of going to go, it's only a 15-minute walk. I'm going to go out and just move my body. And when I came home from the hospital, Tracy got me a PEMF mat, which is this infrared mat with electromagnetic fields.
Wow, that's cool.
And the family jokes every night they come in and Dad's on the mat. And
have you noticed a difference?
Yeah, it's and that's where I do my meditation, and so that's something that if you can indulge yourself in a PEMF mat,
that's cool.
It's a great way to get some zen.
That's really, really cool. Okay, so we have wake up, don't grab the phone, see the blue skies.
Yep.
We have set intention.
Yep.
Try to exercise, which I totally agree with. It sounds like you got some pretty futuristic tech that you're working with. That's pretty cool. And then what else? I
would think the leaning into the people
in
in your life, and obviously family, friends, like being intentional about seeing the people in your life and enjoying the time when you're with those people, but also even at work where we spend most of our days. I feel so blessed to go to work with the people that I go to work with, and that, the team that I lead, and enjoying those interactions and finding all the benefits out of just the relationships in your everyday life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I think about a lot. Work is such a big part of your life, and it's so impactful, and it's so important to surround yourself with people who you enjoy being around.
Yeah, and I'm being way more intentional around that in terms of what I want to be doing and who I'm doing it with.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like, that's part of your life that you're kind of on this autopilot.
Yeah.
Like, I want to show up every day and be in the trenches with people that I love being with.
Yeah, totally.
All day long.
I completely agree
as opposed
with you.
to like, ugh, I have to go to work today.
Yeah.
That's
tough. That's a tough place to be in.
Yeah.
And
that's
like,
part of like, as I run a company and build a team, that's now so important, is who's on the team, who's on the bus.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I love that. Who's on the bus.
Yeah.
So from a teammate standpoint, what do you look for when you're trying to hire?
Well, outside of just raw talent, I have a team, and part of the amazing thing is when I went down January 23rd of last year, if somebody said to me on January 22nd, you're going to be away from the business for 4 months, what's going to happen to the company? I said, it's going to shut down. But my team showed up in such an amazing way and rallied behind me. And part of what they said was, what would Scott do? What would Scott say? And what decision do we have to make so that Scott's proud when he comes back? And so I have this amazing team that's in on the mission, and it's like this band of brothers and sisters that are kind of working together. And when I came back from being out, I took some of my key folks out to lunch, and I told them, I said, I'm so grateful to be here with you guys. And I was being literal. I was grateful to actually be there. But then I went one level deeper, and I said, I'm just so grateful to be here with you guys and the fact that we're all on this journey together. And so it pours into how I run the company and the culture that I'm trying to build. Is like, this isn't just a place to come to get a paycheck and have to go to work. Like, I want people to wake up every day and be excited to come to work and be excited about the people they get to go to work with. And, after a holiday party, I brought in one of my key teammates, and I said, I was just reflecting on how proud I am of the performance over this past year. And I hope that when you come here every day that you feel this, that you and your team have done this. And not just you as a leader, but I want every frontline employee who shows up every day to feel that same impact. So when they show up every day, that they feel proud of their contribution to the broader mission. And so 1.0 version of me would not have had this mindset. And so a big part of just the people that are there to work hard, to believe in something bigger, but also to get fulfillment and joy out of what they do every day is really important to me now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Kind of reflecting on this entire experience, like, out of everything you went through, what would you say you're probably most grateful for?
I would say the people in my life. When I was in the hospital, my mom every day would sit by my bedside, and she would read me text messages and emails from home with prayers and messages of love and support. And at the time I couldn't see. I had had the surgeries to restore my eyesight, so I was blind. And I remember just tears pouring down my face. But that's what got me to the finish line, like having that love and support, and just knowing that there's this whole village behind me. And now I have such an appreciation for the people in my life, my kids, my wife, my parents, my in-laws, my friends, my colleagues, like everybody in my life is so important to me, and I don't take it for granted anymore. And so when I talk about thinking about somebody and picking up the phone and having a conversation, I mean it. And if I run into you and I say, let's grab lunch, we're actually going to have lunch. And so there's so many people in our lives that we lose touch with. Time goes on. And so I'm really just trying to like honor the people in my life and spend more quality time with them with intention.
Yeah, really leaning into your community.
Yeah.
But also like that was so impactful for you to have this village behind you.
Yeah.
That you're probably much more inclined to lean in and help and be there for others
100%.
when they're going through a tough season or experiencing something hard.
And that's what was so, I think, hard for me when I came home. I was like, wait a second, why do I have all these cards? And why was there a meal train for 100 days of our village showing up and feeding my family, and all these amazing things that all of our friends showing up at the hospital to bring snacks for the nurses and the doctors, and sit with my wife and my parents and my in-laws, and like our village showed up. I was like, I wasn't that guy. 1.0 Scott wasn't that guy who showed up and would go to the hospital and send stuff. And Tracy she would do that. And now it's showing up, and no matter in any way possible for the people in your life is so important. And so I think that's been just such a transformational piece of just getting so much out of the people in your life.
Yeah.
And enjoying that time with them.
Yeah. I love that. That's a good way to end it right there. You're
Awesome.
a miracle, man.
Thank
That's
you.
truly incredible what you've been through. And I so appreciate your willingness to come on the podcast and share your experience.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you.
I got a lot. I've gotten a lot from it, just from the phone conversations and getting to know you over the last few months. And then I've taken so much away during this hour that we've had together. And I feel like the audience, I hope they got as much out of it as I did, because it's truly, you're an inspiring man.
Thank you.
Been
Thanks for
through a
giving
lot.
the platform for me to tell the story.
Of course. Thanks for being on.